Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of You're the Cure. I'm Dr. Ben Edwards, first podcast interview of 2024. We ended 2023 with Jamie Winship, and we thought we'd just keep right on going into 24 with Jamie. So, welcome back, Jamie. Before we,
One long. We've never broke. We just did one long. We're still in the same interview.
yeah, well, I sure appreciate you coming back. Real quick, little housekeeping before we get started. I need to announce. Um, on behalf of my team, we're launching a new website. So if you're currently a member, be looking for an email later this week, probably Wednesday or Thursday, with new login credentials for this new website we're launching. Also, next Saturday, I'll be speaking. I believe that's the 13th, the 12th annual Lubbock Women's Health Seminar. Check that out, theinsideoutfoundation.org. You can get tickets there. All right, so this new launch of the website's coming on Thursday, and I'm so excited about it because it's a culmination. This has been in me for a long time. And as our long-term listeners and members know, over 12 years of integrative medicine, I've always been preaching these four pillars: nutrition, hydration, movement, and peace. But we also did a lot of other things. And through this 12 years of growing and maturing and really getting rid of stuff, it's become easier and easier and more focused to down to this pretty simple thing. A doctor can't cure you besides an orthopedic surgeon, trauma surgeon. I want to clarify. I'm not talking about acute urgent care stuff. I'm talking about chronic disease that's killing Americans. The top killers: heart disease, cancer, Alzheimer's, obesity, diabetes, autoimmune disease. There's 100 different autoimmune diseases now. These are all new phenomenon over the past 100 years, and I'm not going to get into that right now. I'm just here to say, with this new website, we're doubling down, tripling down, quadrupling down on the truth. And the truth is, at best, I, as a physician, can buy you some time. I can treat symptoms either pharmaceutically or nutraceutically, and that's fine. There's a time and place for it, but we need to just be honest with ourselves. That's what Jamie teaches. Just speak the truth, be honest. And I'm telling you honestly, as a physician trained in the United States in the Western paradigm, at most, we can treat your symptom and tamp things down and buy you a little time, but we're putting off the inevitable, and that is your body's going to continue to deteriorate. Blue Cross Blue Shield in 2019 published a study that said that deterioration starts for millennials, starts at about age 28. Over half of kids now have a chronic disease. So there is something going on here. And it was the founder of modern medicine, founder John Hopkins Medical School, Sir William Osler, said the first duty of the physician is to teach the masses not to take medicine. And I can tell you, after 7 years of conventional medicine, 12 years of integrative teaching, that is the key. And what I want to teach you, it's not the gene and it's not the germ. Those are two deceptions, and I'm not going to go down that. I don't want to waste the time on that today. That'll be a future episode, or go listen to past episodes. It's all about the terrain. It is 100% about your terrain. Go listen to 2 episodes back with my dad. He reversed his diabetes and his hypertension and obesity and his fatigue, and through terrain, stewardship of the terrain. But the number one terrain issue and the number one terrain disruptor is right between your forehead, your frontal lobe, your thinking. And as y'all heard last time with Jamie, the fear, shame, and guilt, these thoughts that we have that drive sympathetic dominance, cortisol surge, which blocks your thyroid and does all the things that cortisol does, keeps you sick. That is the truth. You cannot eat and exercise and hydrate yourself fully to true wellness. God designed you perfectly, and it's a matter of understanding the design. And you know what? And this is what we're going to talk about today. Imagine if you had a $200,000 Ferrari or whatever they cost these days, I don't know, an amazing machine. And if it broke down, imagine if you had on speed dial, you could text the guy that designed it and the guy that built it. You could have both them on speakerphone. Hey guys, here's what's going on. I'm blowing a bunch of black smoke out my exhaust, and there's this weird noise, and my left turn signal's not working. You could talk to the guy that made it. Wouldn't that be cool? Well, let's turn to your body. You have high blood pressure, high blood sugar, migraine headaches, fibromyalgia, lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, cancer. These things are symptoms. They are not diseases. It is a lack of knowledge, a lack of stewardship, and a lack of being able to understand that we have a creator we can talk to. God, what do you want me to know about this lupus, this joint pain, this inflammation, this rash? And what do you want me to do about it? You designed me perfectly. You're the designer. Let's talk about it. I mean, imagine. And I'm not trying to throw doctors under the bus. I'm a doctor, but I'm here to honestly confess we have the worst health outcomes in the United States of America because a way that seems right to a man is what we've been doing. And we forgot to consult the guy the designer. So, Jamie, welcome back. The main thing, Jamie, I'm so glad you're back because I want my listeners to hear your perspective on this question of because this is the number one question I get when I start to talk about peace pillar and God can speak to you is I don't think I can hear God. How do you hear God? Does God even still speak? I thought he quit speaking his word, the Bible, which obviously that's the word. But the word became flesh too, and he lives in us. But I was listening to one of your podcasts with somebody, and you made a statement. I quoted it here. You asked that question, can God answer me when I'm asking him how to solve this kidnapping? And that was back early on in your early days as a police officer. That was a huge question. And so I want you to speak to that, but then through the timeline in your 20s, I think it was you go to seminary. So I look at that as an institution that taught you a lot of cool intellectual theological things, like medical school taught me a lot of scientific things. So you go to seminary, go to Indonesia, and I think it was 5 years there, and you said there wasn't much fruit. And I think it was Dave who said, well, you don't know who you are. Those are two huge key pieces. Can I hear from God in this about this kidnapping? And what's this identity thing? I'm not seeing any fruit with my seminary training over here in Indonesia. So I'm going to kick it to you now, and you just go after this. Untie some knots for us, and speak to my listeners about can we hear from God? You grew up Baptist, I grew up Baptist, so kind of walk us through that if you don't mind.
Yeah, and I want to. Wow, uh, listening to your intro, the whole thing you're saying about symptoms and sickness and the terrain. I love that. It's really beautiful. I love what you're saying. I love how you talk about that. I think about all everything that I'm involved in personally right now has to do with I'll say it like this, and I think this is what you mean: kingdom versus empire. That's how we think about it. There's empire thinking, which is conventional thinking, basically, and empire thinking is about scarcity and certainty and separation, and it leads to self-protection and self-promotion, which is death to community. That kills a community. You can't have community in an empire. But kingdom is about we're interconnected. We're all connected. Everything's connected. Like you don't just take a drug and fix something. You don't just put money into a problem and it gets fixed. It doesn't work that way. It has to be transformed, right? It has to go back to its original design, as you're saying. So when I went into the police department, I am a believer. You know, I grew up Baptist, independent Baptist, and what I'm grateful for in that upbringing is really was a love of the Bible, for sure, a love of the Bible. But it was a looking at the Bible like as if it was a magic book, like it was a sorcerer's book, and you just would look for these magic spells to say in there, and if you just said them, everything would work out. Or and instead it's this book about relationship, and I love it. You said it's about the terrain that you're in, and what's the reality and the truth of it. So when I went in the police department, I was a Christian. um, my first deep understanding, ironically, of Jesus in a relationship that was beautiful to me, because religion was not very attractive to me, was from a nurse when I was in the hospital. I was in the hospital going through knee surgery because of a wrestling incident when I was 17, and this physical therapist was working with me, and the way she communicated to me about this is what she said to me: your body can get well. Your body knows how to get well. She said, what's going to kill you is your anger. I'd never had anybody say anything like that to me before. She said, that will destroy you. And, I was 17 and mad and cocky and all this. And so I completely insulted her, but she kept coming back every day to me as if we'd never met and starting again with me. And she would work in the physical therapy part, but she kept saying to me, like, about herself. I'm a single mom. I grew up in West Virginia. I went to school at night to get a degree, and she said, and I learned that Jesus is always with me, and He's the healer, and He took away my bitterness and my wrong view of myself and all of that. 17, and the Lord's pouring this into me through. So I have this thing about healthcare workers of this real high regard. It's like, and I always say when I'm talking about her, because I've never ever seen her again, although I've looked for her for many years. I've never been able to find her again. But I kept saying, lots of people in that hospital when I was there were trying to make my body well, but she was trying to make me well. And I could tell that she was different. She was trying to make me well. She was trying to heal me. And that was my first real understanding of Jesus. Like, that's what Jesus is doing. That's what the great physician is doing. He's not treating symptoms. He goes to the root of the illness, of the sickness, which is those two things. We don't understand God, and we clearly do not understand ourselves. So when I went into the police department, I did know Jesus at this very beautiful level. And so I thought, well, I want to do in the police department what this nurse did to me. Like, if I could, here she walks in a room with a person she doesn't know, who's mad, who's arrogant, I would cuss her out. Every time she started talking to me, I would insult her. And she just kept pushing through it. And her love was greater than my hatred, I'd never seen that before. And she healed me in a way. She walked me into wholeness with Jesus. So I wanted to do that. So she was my model, because people can't do what they've never seen. They need to see a well person. Otherwise, we all just look at all the sick community. We're like, well, this is the norm. Like, we're all, everyone's allergic to everything. And as you're saying, like, those statistics are frightening, but accurate. And so when I went into the police department, my dream was, I'm going to bring this transformation to cops and to people on the street. And when I got into it, I realized pretty quickly I don't know how to do it. And so it's like coming through medical school, right? Coming through the police academy, coming through all the training, and I was in one of the departments I've worked with just contacted me this morning about coming and working with them because it's such a disaster. But I was from a really big department, and they're really good in their training. But when I got on the street, I realized this isn't what they need. Like, we're law enforcers. They need servers and protectors, but we aren't training servers and protectors. We're training law enforcers. And law enforcers, when they go out, create conflict. That's what they do. They don't solve anything. They treat an incident, but it doesn't solve anything. Wow, we could talk about this forever in the world. And so when we look at the scriptures, though, we see Jesus is not a law enforcer. He's the opposite. He's a server and protector. And the law enforcers don't like him because he won't punish, and he won't say you're the good guy and you're the bad guy. He's there to serve and protect. And so when I was in the police department, I realized pretty quick after I got through my training officer, who was also great, great, but mean. And I realized I don't know how to do this. So then my question was, okay, how do I learn how to do this? I don't have a teacher. Like, I don't know anyone. I can't go to my church. My church leadership doesn't know how to do this because I learned it from a nurse in a hospital. That's where I learned all that I know. And which is so like the scriptures, right? Fishermen are going around and teaching this stuff, and not the Pharisees. But so my question, so I started looking at scripture, and I started like, how do these people in the Bible know what to do? How do they figure out what the next step is in their vocation, not in religion and not in magic, but in their real life? How are they knowing we need to go this way? We need to do this next. And the only answer to that is they could hear from God at some level, whatever that means. So raised as I was, God doesn't speak. There's no gifts in my tradition. The gifts are done. You just have the Bible. So I'm looking at the Bible. I'm looking at the Bible and I'm asking God, how do these people in the Bible know what to do? And it's just they can hear. And Jesus says it. If you want to, I only say what I hear the Father saying. I only do what I see the Father doing. And I'm like, okay, I'm in the text. I'm looking at the text, and the text is pointing me to something bigger than the text, which of course that's what it should be doing. Like, if you read a book and you're not in your imagination way out here, the book has no real value. Like, you can't live in the literal word. So then I thought, well, how do they know? How did they learn how to hear from God? And so Abraham just jumped out at me because he's not pursuing God, but suddenly he has this interaction with the God who speaks, which he's never known before, and he starts to just take steps in the direction of the leading of the voice, however that voice. And so I just thought, well, I'm going to try that. And so I just started in little things in the police department, on the job, just like, okay, I know how to handle a domestic dispute. I've been trained. I know how to do it. But Jesus, if you were here, what would you do differently than what I've been trained to do? That's all I asked. And I would have an idea, like this idea, which I now call the mind of Christ. And the Spirit of the living God is inside of me. And the Spirit leads us in all truth and all of that. But I didn't really understand that. But I would just have this idea. And and the idea was like someone else said it to me, but it was in my own mind. And I would say, wow, that's a pretty good idea. And I would just try it and it would work. And I'd be like, huh. And I would write it down in my notebook. In this situation, when I treated this situation this way, it worked. When I treat it this way, I'm going to be back here next week. I'm going to be back in this. Every cop says it all the time. Oh yeah, I know that. We know that address. Like, we're going back there again. And nothing gets solved. But my question is, I don't want to go back. Isn't it? What if we didn't have to go back there anymore? And the other police are like, yeah, whatever. That's never going to happen. So I started. So then what happens with the Lord is when you start in the little, which is how he starts, he levels up. Jesus is doing this to the disciples all the time. He starts at this low level with them, and then he just keeps leveling up. And when they fall, they never fall back to zero. They think they do, but they don't. But they fall at higher and higher levels. And he just keeps, okay, let's go, let's do this again, let's try this again, let's do this, like that. And I could see that in the text. The beauty of the text is like, they're like case studies that I've done in law enforcement and you do in special forces and everything. You read case studies, you probably do this in medicine, and you look at, okay, here's what they did, here's what worked, here's what didn't work. That's what I'm reading the Bible as. It's like, I've got thousands of years of cross-cultural ethnicity, everything, walking, figuring out a relationship with the Lord, and we get to read all of the history of it. What did they do right? What did they do wrong? When they were tight, how did it work? When they got exiled, why? And I'm just doing it. Only it's new in my context, right? So exciting. It's like, wow, but it's the same God, it's the same humanity, it's the same lies, it's all the same, but now you're in a domestic dispute in Washington, D.C. And so I would do that, and I would realize as I learned it and understood it, and God said, it was kind of like, can you hear me in this scenario? Yes. Okay, can you hear me when we're alone in Galilee and it's just me talking to you? Yes. Okay, because you're going to be able to hear me later when people want to kill you, and you're still going to be able to hear me clearly. But we start in the quiet. We start in the quiet time. We start in your devotion. But one day you're going to be standing in a hurricane force wind, and you're going to hear me just as clearly, but we've got to learn how to do it. We have to learn how to hear like that. And so I just started practicing that. And so in my second year, we had this kidnapping case that happens. A kid abducted from a bus stop in the school day. I was just up in DC a couple of weeks ago, and my wife was with me, and I was just driving around to different places where I worked these cases and actually taking pictures of the places, just remembering the journey that I've been on with the Lord, because we're now in a way higher place with him. but it's all the same lessons, right? Like you saying, hydration and these lessons, these 4, like, you can hear God, you know your identity, right? God is for you. These basic principles. And so go to the school, talk to the principal. The kid didn't ever get off the bus. He's elementary age. His parents are at the school. Everyone's freaking out. I interview the parents. It's not domestic. It's just like a weird. He's gone, and the father's obviously extremely upset. And we had 2 sons at the time, and I said to the father's very moved by the whole thing, and I said to him, and again, we're already 2-3 hours. It's already been 3 hours. It's like, forget it. In this kind of case, every hour is over. And we have no description. We have nothing except he went to the bus stop, interviewed the kids at the bus stop. They're not paying attention to anything. There was a car involved. No one knows, describe it. And so I say to the father, you know what? I promise you we're going to find your son. And my partner, who's senior to me, was there. He had come on the scene too. And when I walk away, he goes, you do not say that to a parent. You do not promise a parent something like that you can't do. This gets their hopes up. It's the wrong, and I felt really bad. Like, I know that you don't do that. But it seemed like the right thing to say at the moment. And so then we split up and we got a perimeter going and the helicopter's out there. We didn't have computers back in those days in our cars yet, and so it's just like a lot of like, let's get out there and if the guy's still in the area, I don't know. So I just go back to the bus stop area and thinking, I don't know, maybe he's one of these guys that hangs around. I don't know, I just pull off on the side of the street, and there's like a 35-mile-an-hour zone right there, and I just pull off in between all these apartments. And I just say to God, okay, all right, I've watched you shut down domestic disputes. I've seen you do these things for a year now. You know where this kid is. Like, I know you know where this kid is. Would you tell me where he is? And if you were going to do something, like, do you do something like that? Is that over? Do you still do work like that? And if you do work like that, how would I know? Like, how would I know what it's you, what to do? How would I know? Just teach me. And so I'm sitting there in my car on the side of the road, parked against the side of the road and on the shoulder. And this car comes down the street and it passes me. And it's like almost in like slow motion. When he passes me, he's going the speed limit 35 or something. It's a guy in a car. He passes me and I look at him and he looks at me and and I just feel like someone punched me in the stomach or like I was going to throw up. And this feeling I know, so I've learned this feeling so well in my life to try. I had it the other day. It was so interesting, but now I know exactly what it means. And each of us has to learn how God talks to us because it's different for us, all of us. So that there's no mistaking. I know that voice. The sheep hear my voice. They recognize my voice because I call them by name. I'm speaking to you, Jamie. Not talking to the whole crowd. I'm talking to you about this. And I know I've learned to recognize that voice. You have to learn to recognize it, as all humans have to learn. So it's like a little 2-year-old in a room when of crowded people, when their parent walks into that room and starts talking, they know that's their parent. They don't know anything about that parent. They don't know where they're from. They know nothing about their background, nothing. They just know that's the voice. And so they will learn the other stuff about the parent, but right now we know who that is. And when they talk, that's my parent. And so I felt sick to my stomach and I'm looking at him. So when you ask God a question, pay attention to what happens around you. People don't do it. They just ask a question and they're like gone. Like, ask a question, pay attention, like look at everything through the day. This is the life of expectancy with God. And so I just looked at him. I felt sick, and I was like, okay, I just asked God, how would he do it? Where would he? And this happens. Okay, obedience means to hear and respond. So I asked a question. I have a sense I'm going to respond to it. So I actually cut out in front of him and cut him off. And I get out and I look in his car and there's nothing in the car. And I'm looking at him and he's just staring at me. And I'm like, open your trunk, get out and open your trunk right now, get out and open your trunk right now. Because what's the worst thing that could happen? He would yell at me, he would complain, I would get in trouble. I have gotten suspended twice because doing this. It's not risk free. But this was like, so maybe what if it's the wrong guy? Who cares? I'm gonna. So he gets, and he doesn't have to open the trunk, but he gets out, he opens the trunk, and there's the kid in the trunk. And this is like, he's staring at me, freaked out, the guy, the driver. He doesn't know how I know, but he knows I know. Like, he can't figure it out. And I'm like stunned. And the kid is okay. He's like, you can imagine how he felt. He's unharmed. He's just in the trunk. And and so then, I handcuff the guy and everything and call the supervisor, and the units come in, and the detectives come and take him, and he keeps saying, how did you know? The guy keeps saying to me, how did you know? How did he know? He's saying to the detective when they're walking him away, how did he know? Then the detective comes up to me and says, what was your probable cause for stopping that car? Because in court, they're going to ask you, what was your probable cause? And I said, well, I was praying about this. And the detective goes, nope, no, 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 no. And this is an important lesson. This is an important lesson that God taught me. When these kinds of things happen, you have to be able to articulate the process in a way that religious people get it. Like, I can't just go in there and go, well, I had a word of knowledge from the Lord. Like, that means nothing to people. But 12 people 6 months later who I'm telling, this is what happened, in a way that they go, that makes sense to us. The Lord wanted me to learn how to communicate this to other people in a way that made sense to them. And that all of that was involved in this one incident. So I got Officer of the Year for that whole thing. The guy pled guilty in court. I didn't even have to testify. All of it worked out like that. But that was the first that, I had been learning along the way, but the Lord was just saying to me, that's the level at which you can be connected to me and to others. Like, I was connected to that guy when he was passing me. Like, I could, it's a, whenever I have this feeling, it's because I'm in proximity of someone that is so broken. I feel their sickness, like, in myself. So it's a kind of healing. It's really beautiful. I've really learned, because later in my career, when I made detective and all that, when I would be interviewing, I knew I was doing to them what the nurse was doing to me. I was reaching inside of their sickness and walking them towards wholeness. And the way to wholeness is always through confession. And so these people, they would sense it, and not 100%, but a lot of humans want to be well, and they know they're broken, and they just don't think there's ever any wellness. I'm going to be sick the rest of my life. But when they have a taste of the wholeness and wellness, they will walk to it. And I would say to them, look, the only way through this is truth telling. You got to tell the truth, right? Do you want to get well, or do you just want to do pain management and coping mechanisms the rest of your life? Like, do you want to get well? Because if you do, there's a way. But it starts with truth telling. You've got to tell the truth. And these people would confess. And part of the healing journey was sometimes that they had to go stay in a secure facility for a lot of years to get well. And they would go understanding that we were serving them by putting them out in a facility, right? So they would stop hurting people. And so that's how it started. And so I just started practicing even more aggressively listening. And then I started getting assigned rookies to train them. And I would say to them, look, because we're in a secular police department and we're not allowed to share our faith. That's the rule. This is a general order that you're not allowed to talk about proselytizing. And so, but my superiors never thought of it like that. They were like, this guy solved a case. Everyone's thrilled with what happened. Because when the kingdom comes, everyone goes up, not just one person and their team. The good guys back there, everyone goes up. And so it was never a threat to the chief, that I was out there doing this stuff, because people would write letters to the chief going, wow, thanks for what you train your people to do. Those are the letters they would send. Your training is unbelievable because we've never seen cops do this. And he would take all the credit for it, which is what chiefs of police do. That's fine. I don't, if it's not about me, it's about, the kingdom. And so then when I would train rookies, I would just say to them, look, there's two ways you can do this job and live your life. One is you can conform to the patterns of the world. You can do it. I mean, and that's okay. Like, you go through the training, you do the training, you figure out how to cope with trauma, blah, blah, blah. I said, but there's another way to do it. And I'm going to show you the other way. You can call it what you want, but I'm going to show you how to do it. And I call it being in the kingdom. That's what I call it. And so if you want to learn how to do what I'm going to show you, you need to be in the kingdom in order to do it. That's what I would tell them. Well, they would work two cases with me and go, I want to be in the kingdom. Not because they wanted to get saved and go to heaven when they die, because they wanted to have the impact in humanity that you can have as a kingdom person. People around you get well. But there were people that didn't. There were people that didn't. Like, I don't care about that. I don't care about that. I just care about my career. And, blah, blah, blah. There's always that. So that's how I started. And then, as the journey went on, the hearing was the key. And then when I was overseas, seminary kind of just talked it right out of me, as you're saying. It's like, that's too mystical and too weird. And it's all about head knowledge. So when I got overseas, I stopped doing, I started just doing apologetic polemic kind of thing. And immediately I came in, the conflict began. Like, everything was conflict. Everything was a fight. Nothing got better. And I was just kept going to the Lord, like, what is wrong? Like, in the police department, this was like heaven to me. Now this is like awful, and got arrested and put on trial in Indonesia and all this stuff. And it was the Lord leveling me up. He says, you know how to hear now. Don't get distracted by head knowledge and, like, this is the deception. You can hear. Here's the most important thing you need to hear: who you are. Who you are. Not just how to solve this and what to do here. Who you are is more important than anything else. Now you're ready to know that part. But again, I had to be reminded, it's like you keep drifting off, and then you take it in your own hands and you drift off and everything falls apart. And then, so 5 years of like, what are we doing? Where have I lost my way? And the Lord's like, you're not listening to me anymore. You're listening to your apologetics and polemics brain. That stuff's okay, but it has to be submitted to my relationship, me and you. So 5 years of figuring that out, came back into Indonesia again and meet this guy, McCullum, and he's the one that was watching me work with Muslims, and he said, wow, you don't know who you are, do you? So first is learning how to hear the Lord, and then next is hearing the Lord tell you who you are and who he is at a deep level. Can I hear God? Yes, I can. How do you know? Look at how this works. Okay, good. Okay, so I can. Okay, now what's the most important thing he wants to say to me? Who he is and who I am and who the other is. It's the great commandment. Who he is, love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. Not love your Bible, love apologetics, love your skill, love me. And then love others in the same way that you've learned to love yourself. Like, that was the healing, right? You have everything you need pertaining to life and godliness. You don't need it from them. You don't need to prove anything to those people. You need to be who I made you to be in relation to who I truly am. And in that way, you can impact others like off the charts. And so Mac, he would say to me, you're imitating other people. He said, that's what he would say. You're imitating me. That's what he said, don't imitate me. I'm already here. Learn. We need the gift of who you are, but you don't know who you are. And this is after the police department, after being recruited by the State Department, after going through seminary, after getting ordained, all of that. The next lesson, you don't know who you are. It's like kind of frustrating and embarrassing. But the humility of then going with these kinds of men and them walking me through this process of understanding identity at a really rudimentary level. Wasn't their great skill set, but they did know how to do it. And it just wiped me out. It was just so incredible. And the Lord said to me in that process, he said, you are worshiping what you know about me and not me. You're worshiping what know about me and not me. And because you're doing that, you can't receive from me who you really are, because it comes from me and not from what you know about me. So it was like, I cried. It made me cry. It was a kind of idol. It was like an altar shelf. And he wanted that altar shelf cleared off with all of my knowledge about God and my, awards in the police department, all that stuff. Just like, get rid of that. We're at a different level now. This is a whole nother level. And that's not going to fly. And you need to learn this next level of who you are. And so then that's the first time I just said, who do you say that I am? I've never asked him that because I was afraid to ask God that question, because I thought he was disappointed in me. That's what I believe. And what people do, what Christians do, we run into this all the time, is when they're praying, they're actually self-protecting against God. That's what they're doing. They're afraid to really let God at them. And so they're praying. I was like, I'm not really asking the Lord to really search me and know me, because I'm afraid. Like I asked a group of men the other day, let's stop right now and the Lord's with us right here. Let's ask him what he thinks of me as a dad. And they didn't want to do it. Do you know why they didn't want it?
Scared of what they'd hear.
Exactly right. Exactly right. That I'm not a good dad. That Jesus is going to look at me and go, I'm not a good dad. And I said, he never talks like that to anybody. Why do you think he's going to do it to you? This is the value of the scriptures. What does Jesus say to people caught in adultery? That he's disappointed in them? No, he's saying stop living in the false. This is what the false does. Live in the true. The prostitute, the woman caught, he calls them daughter. The Pharisees say prostitute. The crowd says prostitute. The woman looks in the mirror and says prostitute. Jesus says daughter. That's the identity piece. And his question to her and to Gideon and to everybody in scripture is, why is my mighty man of valor, which is who you are, living as if you're a coward? Why? It's not true. It's never been true. Live in the truth of who you are. And that's what he says to us every day. Why is confession, coming to Jesus and saying, God, tell me, how do you see me as a husband and a father, and letting the Lord look at you and go, you're an amazing husband. You're an unbelievably good father. Why are you not acting like it? That's how he talks. You're a healthy person. Why are you acting sick? That's his question to us all the time. Because you believe things that are not true about what a dad is supposed to be, or what a husband is supposed to be, from the enemy telling you, right? And you'll never make it. And you know it. And so you've given up. I'm telling you, you already are that. Now ask me how to walk it out. Ask me how to walk it out. First of all, you get rid of this. We don't need this. Stop making your kids have devotions every night because someone told you that's what you're supposed to do. Ask me what to do with your kids. I'll tell you. Your kids are different than those kids. And those kids are different from those kids. And your marriage is different from that marriage. You're not all the same and are all supposed to look like this thing, whatever it is. Your gift to your wife, your gift to your kids is the truth of who you are. That's it. Give it to them. But you don't know what it is. You're giving them something that's not true, and it won't work. And it was so simple, it's deep, it's profound. And so when I did this with these men, every person, we just went around, they cried because of what God said to them. He's proud of me. And they're like, he can't be proud. You can't be proud of me. I just said, receive it. Receive what he says. Don't walk away. Receive what he says. He's proud. How can you be proud of me? Because I made you. I'm proud of you. Now, as the person I'm proud of, ask me how to be with your kids. Ask me how to be with your, that's how it just dramatically changes the whole thing. And stop trying to get value from doing these things. Bring your value to the situation. Be well, be whole, be healed, and and bring wholeness and wellness to other people. And so, so once I understood identity and had the hearing component, and this was over years, this wasn't in the weekend retreat. This was over years. It doesn't have to take that long. It just was for me. But once we had those pieces together in the exact same Muslim environment where our guys got stabbed and I got arrested and all of that happened, right back into the same situation, dramatically different effect. So the circumstances didn't change. We did. We were transformed into the renewing of our mind. Stop conforming to the patterns of the world. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you'll know the way to go. Then you'll know the excellent thing to do. How do you do that? Submit yourselves to God. Keep submitting yourselves to God as a living sacrifice. When you submit to God, James says, you automatically resist the enemy. We just try and resist the enemy like I'm just going to resist the enemy. You've already lost. Here's how you resist the enemy. Submit to God. Once you submit to God, the resistance has engaged and he will flee. So we would just fight the enemy, and he loves that. Just come get me, come get me, come get me. And we would go after him and he would crush us. It's like, God's like, I'm not asking you to go get the enemy. I'm asking you to submit to me. I'll take care of the enemy, right? I'll take care of him. We don't say, I rebuke you, Satan. We say, the Lord rebukes you, Satan. The Lord rebukes you. He's our, lead guide. And so then we just started practicing that and then doing it with our Muslim friends, and wow. So that's the journey that we've been on. Well, that's a long answer, but
No, that's awesome. It's incredible and so beneficial because there's such a direct correlation to what we're doing as a practice and as a wellness education that's launching next week. And my firm belief in my heart of hearts that there is no way I can fix somebody. Or any doctor, minus setting a broken bone back together. But even that, all we're doing is getting it close. The body mends the bone. The body knows how to keep blood sugar normal. The body knows how to keep blood pressure normal. And if we want to get in there and try to micromanage physiology, try to force this thing down, which is what we're doing since 1911 when allopathic medicine was declared the way American doctors are going to be trained and practice. We've done this micromanagement with pharmaceuticals and nutraceuticals, and look at the fruit. To me, it's the same thing. Jamie said in one of the other interviews, there wasn't much fruit there in Indonesia when I was debating the Quran. Is the Quran accurate or not? All the intellectual, all the apologetics, and look at the fruit. Well, same thing with medicine. Look at our fruit. And what I'm saying and trying to convince people is the cure, you're the cure, name of the show. It's not a gimmick. It's in you. It's designed in you. And I'm saying here, and from this, when God said, flip it, Ben, we put nutrition, hydration, movement as a priority. And he said, no, flip it. If you don't have the peace pillar, but what does that mean? Well, what Jamie's just been saying, if you don't accurately see your creator, if you think he's mad at you, you think you have to serve him, perform for him, works, whatever, and know all the intellectual stuff that we learned in Sunday school and quote Bible verse, know the fact. Everything Jamie just went through. Flip it to know God accurately and know who he says you are. Now your mitochondria can hum along and make energy, and all this mitochondrial dysfunction that we call disease can resolve itself. Yes, you need to eat real food, not processed junk. But guess what, guys? And I'm not going to promote sitting in this 90-degree that I'm in. You shouldn't sit like that for 8 hours. We know the detrimental effects of that. We know the detrimental effects of drinking high fructose corn syrup all day long, which is in most sweetened drinks. There is stewardship in the physical, but if you don't have this key piece, and that's why we need to start here, is what I'm going to suggest from here on at Veritas. I'm going to suggest and encourage and teach on, let's get the first thing first. Do you know the creator, and do you know who he says you are? And now actually, you don't need me at all. You don't even need a wellness navigator. You can go ask God about, what do I need to eat today or not eat? Should I fast? Should I fast from something or not fast from something? And do I call something you made bad? Is wheat bad? Is this bad? No. So if we don't get this down, then we're just going to spin our wheels in the natural holistic world too.
Right. And as you're saying, why would I care about my body when I hate myself? Right? There's no motivation to it. And the reason people are we're doing this, getting ready to do this documentary on human trafficking, but we want to come at it from this whole different perspective, kind of like you're talking about. Like, it's like, how should we deal with cancer? That's how we deal with human trafficking. Like, it's a sickness and we just got to pump pharmaceuticals into it and it'll get well. And it's like, no, that's not the whole system is trafficked. The whole thing is trafficked. When you said it got hijacked and the medical profession got hijacked, that's that's when Paul says we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers and spiritual wickedness in high places. The whole system of the medical profession is in a lie. The whole thing. And so, right? And so it's hard to fight that. That's why Paul says it's not like that guy or that person. It's the whole thing is false. And we have to bring truth back into all of it. And so when you're talking, we're doing this work with traffickers, and when we're with the traffickers, who are the ones, you know, doing the bringing the victims in, when we get with them and we're like, you're a human being. Why are you trafficking kids? Do you know why? They're powerless and alone. That's their belief of who they are in the world. We're powerless and alone. And this is the only way we know how to have financial power. And most of the ones we're working with are using the money to protect their own kids. That's how deep the lie is. Like, there's no other way to do this. This is the only way we know how to do. We don't like it, but it finances us, and we can't find jobs and blah blah, all that kind of stuff. The whole thing is a lie. So what are we going to do? We're going to come in and we're going to punish this one guy or 12 of them. We're going to lock them up. No change in any of the system. None. And so how do we need people to get well. So we have these folks who we've been meeting with who have become well inside. And when they did, they went out and got other traffickers and brought them into us and said, we don't have to do this anymore. And the system starts to fall apart. The lie starts to crumble because we can get well and without this drug. It's remarkable. Now we don't know quite what to do because they've responded so quickly, right? But the system's going to push back on us. It's going to be dangerous. We know it's coming because we're disrupting the empire, so to speak. And we're going to get the pushback, which I'm sure you feel from the medical powers that be. They don't want this transformation because it's a money market and it's all of that stuff. So it's a very spiritual. This is a movement. When we talk about a spiritual revival, this is what we're talking about. Whole systems that the liar has built are dismantled by the kingdom. Not just everyone's going to church suddenly. That doesn't stop any of the lie of trafficking. It doesn't stop any of the lie of how we treat our body. None of that's affected by we're having 24-hour prayer meetings. It could, but it's typically not the way it goes. We all just go right back into the same old system.
Yeah.
So what you're doing is so important.
Well, likewise, Jamie, and what you've explained and walked us through today is going to be so beneficial. And it just reminds me in Ephesians, this secret plan. In one version I was reading, the secret plan, everything is getting put under the headship of Christ. And further in Ephesians, it talks about another part of this secret plan now revealed and made known to us, that God is going to use the church, which is his body, to put on the manifold, many-sided wisdom of God to the principalities in the spiritual realm. And if we can, and from a big picture and what Jamie's talking about, these systems, the kingdom is coming, but he's using us with him, and he's the head. It's all getting put under his headship. His body, though, is right there. We're the ones putting on display his manifold wisdom to the fallen angels. And then it talks about in Romans that the unique members of the body, I am no more important than any of my patients, nor is Jamie, or it's not competition and comparison. That's not the kingdom. That's the empire Jamie talked about at the top of the show. So that's so cool. We're uniquely made, and we got to know who that uniqueness. And then God puts us together, knits this body together. Go read Ephesians. It's awesome. And we're seeing it happen right now. And I think this is why this resonates so much, Jamie. Here's the book, Living Fearless. Let me get it there. I've only had this book for like 6 or 7 weeks, and it's already transforming my practice. I didn't I'm not into numbers. I don't watch numbers of stuff, social media numbers and hits and chart where we are on charts on podcasts. But I saw our interview was in the top 10 of all health podcasts. That, which I'm not chasing a number. I'm saying it's resonating. And the feedback I'm getting, it's resonating. This piece of the puzzle that fell into place in the last part of 2023 is we're launching this new thing in 24. Guys, this is a big, 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 big deal. I can't stress enough from a doctor health standpoint. You're looking for your disease to be managed or hopefully looking for it to go away. I can't do that. And no doctor can. That is the key message now and for all of 24 and for the rest of the time. And God's going to keep showing and showing, revealing more deep stuff in here. But I'm telling you, this is absolutely essential. So, Jamie, thank you for being obedient. Thank you for pursuing the kingdom first and stepping out. I know, just incredible. Y'all go to identityexchange.com, click the media button. There's 4 pages of videos there of Jamie talking to various groups, and spend some time listening and of course getting the word, and then practice, 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 practice. That's the key take home message from the first half of this show. Ask and then be quiet and listen and write it down and practice, practice. And God is eager to reveal himself. Jamie, give you the last word.
Well, thank you. I mean, it's. I love how the when Jesus decides to describe himself, he describes himself as the great physician, right? And what and because what a and he judges us not as a judge in a courtroom, but he judges us as a physician judges people. Exactly what you're doing. So when a physician judges you and you come in and you say, "I've got cancer" or "I've got hypertension," the physician doesn't condemn you. He says, okay, I'm going to tell you the truth. Do you want to get well or not? Okay, if you want to get well, we're getting rid of the coping mechanisms and we're going to go to the core of the sickness. That's what the great physician does. He doesn't say, oh, you're a good guy or you're a bad guy, heaven or hell. He's bringing healing. And so we have to get well. We have to get well, as you're saying. The church is a body and we're sick and we're anemic and all that. And so it makes sense that the image of physician is what is the lead for Jesus. And so I love that. And I just want to mention that we just released, it's on our website, a series we call 21 Days of Finding Hope in Depression. And because we run into it's free and it's on our website. So I'd love for people to see it. And it's based on the great commandment in scripture of working through depression based on love God, love your neighbor, and love yourself. And so even Ben, I'd love it if you would look at it and give me your professional opinion. But we've had good responses from it so far. But it's free. It's on our website. 21 Days of Hope. It's called. So
Awesome. Yeah, I'll definitely check it out and give you some feedback. I'm sure it's awesome. And that's especially in the younger generation. That's the number one chief complaint that when they call the doctor's office these days, depression, anxiety, this mood thing, it's out of control. So that's all. I'm so happy you mentioned that. IdentityExchange.com is a website. Jamie Winship, his book Living Fearless, the new 21-day program for depression. Y'all go check that out. Jamie, we'd love to have you back someday. I know you're super busy though, so appreciate you coming today.
absolutely.
All right. Well, everybody, will be back next week with another great show. I'm Dr. Ben Edwards. You're the cure. VeritasMedical.com is a website. We'll archive this there and all our social media pages, YouTube, all that kind of stuff. So come back next week. We'll keep rolling into 24 with this. Thanks, Jamie. See you next time.